Action cinema has always thrived on the promise of spectacle, the kind of visceral energy that pulls you into a world where fists speak louder than words and conflict is resolved through raw kinetic impact. Yet buried beneath the polished cuts that audiences know so well lies an entire realm of forgotten fights, fully filmed battles that once pulsed with intensity before being erased in near secrecy. These sequences were not simple trims or mild edits. They were entire confrontations meticulously designed, choreographed, and staged with the intention of shaping the emotional and narrative spine of their films. But everything changed the moment these scenes were shown to a select few. Test screenings, those quiet, controlled rooms where early viewers catch glimpses of unfinished films, became the very forces that silenced some of the most ambitious action sequences ever shot. Sometimes audiences found the violence too stark. Sometimes the pacing felt disrupted. And sometimes the raw force of a fight scene shifted the tone so dramatically that the studio feared it would fracture the entire film. With a few comments on a feedback card, battles that took weeks to create were cut down, buried, or locked away. Directors and stunt coordinators have spoken over the years about these lost scenes with a mix of frustration and pride. They understood how much sweat, precision, and risk went into crafting each collision. They knew which sequences had the power to redefine a character or enrich a story's underlying tension. Yet those moments never saw the light of day, surviving only in rough work prints, faint production notes, or the memories of the people who brought them to life. Tonight we revisit the hidden fights that were meant to shape their films, the scenes audiences never had the chance to witness, removed after a single encounter with the unpredictable world of test screenings. Fact 1: Hard Target's Hidden Warehouse Hunt. Before Hard Target was shaped into its final release, it contained a far more elaborate warehouse battle that captured John Woo's talent for turning violence into visual poetry. In its original construction, Chance Boudreau moved through the industrial shadows like a predator, weaving between hanging chains, collapsing crates, and rusted machinery. The sequence was long, layered, and choreographed with a precision that highlighted both Chance's desperation and Woo's operatic sensibilities. Crew members later spoke of how the fight's rhythm, slow motion dives, sudden bursts of movement, impacts echoing across concrete, was meant to serve as one of the film's defining moments. But the test screening audience reacted in a way the studio could not ignore. Several viewers noted that the prolonged brutality felt relentless, while others commented that Chance appeared dangerously unhinged. Universal, already bracing for concerns from the MPAA, concluded that the full sequence risked triggering a more restrictive rating. What followed was a sweeping removal. Entire sections of the fight were stripped away, leaving behind only glimpses of a confrontation that once carried considerable weight. The lost warehouse hunt survives only in bits of work print footage, and scattered on set recollections, fragments of a set piece that was built to dominate the film's midpoint, but was instead buried before audiences ever saw it. Fact 2: Rapid Fire's Vanished Alley Ambush. Rapid Fire originally featured a gritty, high-stress alley ambush designed to showcase Brandon Lee's instinctive agility and emerging strength. Filmed in a cramped backstreet lined with brick walls and overflowing dumpsters, the scene placed Jake Lowe in a claustrophobic labyrinth where he faced multiple attackers. The choreography leaned into realism, fast, efficient counters, sudden sweeps, and tight grapples captured in wide angles to emphasize impact. For the stunt team, this was one of the clearest demonstrations of Lee's evolving screen presence. However, once the rough cut was shown to early audiences, the tone of the scene raised concerns. Some viewers admired its authenticity, but many felt the intensity made Jake seem far more ruthless than the filmmakers intended at this point in the narrative. Others commented that the fight's weight disrupted the pacing, pulling emotional focus away from the story's next turning points. Fearing these reactions could damage the film's accessibility, the studio removed the entire ambush. The scene has since become a kind of myth among fans, whispered about in stunt circles, remembered through production notes, yet never restored to the film where it once played a major role. Fact 3: American Yakuza's Forgotten Construction Yard War. American Yakuza once included a sprawling construction yard battle that served as a raw illustration of the protagonist's dangerous position between two powerful criminal worlds. The fight was staged across unfinished scaffolding, scattered tools, and towering steel frames, creating a chaotic battleground where forces from the American mob and Japanese Yakuza collided. Viggo Mortensen's character stood at the center of this violent convergence, navigating a clash that symbolized his fractured identity as much as it showcased physical danger. Crew accounts recall the scene as emotionally loaded, filled with brutal exchanges and weapon improvisation. But during the film's initial test screening, the response was harsher than anticipated. Many audience members found the sequence too heavy, describing the brutality as exhausting rather than thrilling. Others argued that the sheer length of the confrontation overshadowed quieter character beats that followed. With marketing concerns already swirling Columbia, Trista made the decision to cut the entire battle to preserve pacing and tone. In the finished film, only faint hints remain of the conflict that once anchored a turning point in the story. The missing yard war lingers as one of the project's most intriguing omissions, a moment designed to deepen tension, but ultimately lost to the editing process. Fact 4. Best of the Best IE's removed arena ordeal. Best of the Best I originally devoted considerable focus to a punishing arena showdown, meant to define the brutality of the Coliseum. In this missing sequence, Travis Brickley squared off against a ruthless opponent, in a bout that pushed both fighters far past the point of endurance. The choreography highlighted the raw cost of underground combat, heavy lingering body blows, labored breathing, and moments where both men staggered under the strain of their own momentum. The camera work closed in tight, capturing every grimace and collision to emphasize the unforgiving environment in which Travis fought. But when this version of the film appeared before a test audience, reactions shifted the studio's plans. Many viewers described the scene as draining, while others found the realism uncomfortable, arguing that the sheer brutality overwhelmed the emotional through-line. Producers, wary of damaging the film's pacing and fearing harsher scrutiny from ratings boards, made the decision to remove the entire ordeal. In the theatrical cut, only the narrative consequences remain, with none of the visceral immediacy originally intended. The full arena fight exists now only in crew memories, a grueling sequence that once aimed to shape Travis's fate with far more intensity than audiences ever saw. Fact 5. The Quest's missing preliminary rumble. Among the many globally inspired matchups filmed for the Quest, one early round fight was designed to enrich the tournament's world building. Set beneath stark spotlights and framed with smooth circular camera, sweeps the dual-paired Van Damme's character against an opponent whose technique contrasted sharply with his own. The sequence blended grappling turns, rapid counters, and a decisive finishing move that drew roars from the on-set extras. For the stunt team, this was one of the tournament's most technically layered confrontations. Yet when producers viewed test screening reactions, concerns mounted. Several audience members noted the fight's placement felt premature, overshadowing the tension meant to build toward the later rounds. Others remarked that the scene made the protagonist appear too dominant, too early, distorting the arc of rising difficulty. Faced with these pacing and tonal concerns, the studio elected to remove the entire match from the final release. Today, only scattered photographs and rehearsal snippets offer clues about what the scene once looked like. The tournament bracket's sudden jump still hints at a missing chapter that was intended to broaden the event's scope and texture. Fact 6. Rapid Fire's deleted campus encounter. Rapid Fire once included a dynamic courtyard ambush shot at dusk on a college campus, a sequence crafted to chart the moment Jake Lowe began harnessing his instincts under pressure. In the original cut, gang members closed in from multiple directions, forcing Jake to adapt quickly as he navigated between stairwells, benches, and landscaped obstacles. The choreography emphasized fluid footwork, sharp defensive counters, and the growing confidence behind each strike. For the filmmakers, it was meant to visually mark Jake's shift from reluctant witness to active survivor. But when this version screened for early audiences, the fight's impact proved polarizing. Some viewers praised its energy, yet many felt the confrontation arrived too early and made Jake appear overly proficient before his character arc had fully developed. Additionally, some respondents noted that staging such violent action in an academic setting created tonal friction. Concerned the sequence disrupted the film's momentum, the studio chose to cut it entirely. As a result, the theatrical version moves more abruptly through Jake's evolution, leaving a subtle but noticeable gap where the rooftop-lit courtyard fight once stood, a lost moment of character shaping replaced by a narrative leap. Fact 7. Bloodsport IE's removed cell block uprising. Bloodsport I initially opened with a ferocious cell block confrontation that set a much darker tone for Alex Cardo's journey. Shot in a narrow corridor lined with barred doors and flickering lights, the scene threw Alex into a desperate struggle against several inmates who attacked him without warning. The fight emphasized raw survival, bodies crashing into metal railings, fists slamming against concrete, and the harsh echo of boots scraping across the floor. For the filmmakers, this was intended to show Alex at his most vulnerable, a man forced to rely on pure instinct, long before stepping into the structured brutality of the Kumite. But when the early cut with screen test audiences reacted strongly to the sequence, many described the clash as too grim, arguing that its realism clashed with the heightened martial arts tone the film would later adopt. Others noted that the protracted violence made the opening feel oppressive rather than thrilling. Concerned that the dark intensity would alienate viewers and overshadow the story's thematic shift toward redemption, the studio decided to remove the scene entirely. Only a few production stills and stunt team anecdotes remain, leaving fans to wonder how this gritty opener might have reframed Alex's growth had it survived the editing process. Fact 8. Drive's deleted calf chaos. Drive's inventive choreography once extended into a full calf showdown that never made it to the final cut. In the missing sequence, Toby Wong found himself ambushed inside a cramped diner where every surface became part of the fight. He vaulted across counters, slid between tables, and turned everyday objects, mugs, trays, napkin dispensers, into improvised tools that amplified the scene's playful energy. For the stunt team, this was a creative highlight, a moment that demonstrated the film's unique blend of comedy and high-speed martial arts. Yet when the scene was shown in early test screenings, the response proved too uneven for the studio's comfort. Some audience members loved the kinetic flair, but others felt overwhelmed by the rapid shifts in tone, calling the scene too chaotic for its early placement in the film. A few viewers even remarked that the comedic elements undercut the narrative tension the story was trying to build. With concerns about pacing and tonal clarity growing louder, the studio decided to remove the entire calf confrontation. Today, the lost sequence lives only in behind-the-scenes footage and fond recollections from those who filmed it, a moment of joyful creativity, erased in favor of a smoother narrative arc. Fact 9. Showdown in Little Tokyo's erased dojo reprisal. Showdown in Little Tokyo originally featured an extended dojo confrontation that plunged Chris Kenner into a violent echo of his past. Set inside a dimly lit training hall filled with wooden weapons and traditional decor, the scene unfolded like a battle between memory and reality. Kenner faced a group of Yakuza trainees in a tight formation, moving through the fray with sharp Aikido transitions, punishing Kenpo strikes and sudden weapon disarms that played out beneath stark overhead lighting. It was crafted to reveal the emotional weight he carried, a silent thread tying him to trauma he never fully escaped. But during the test screening, the scene produced unintended reactions. Viewers commented that the fight shifted the tone too sharply toward darkness, disrupting the film's lighter buddy cop rhythm. Others felt the sequence lingered too long, dragging momentum at a point where the narrative demanded acceleration. With concerns about tonal balance and structural pacing, the studio removed the entire dojo reprisal. The final cut reduces the moment to a brief transitional beat, leaving a noticeable void where a powerful character-defining sequence once stood. Fans still point to this missing fight as one of the film's standout opportunities lost to the editing room. Fact 10. Out for Justice's removed barroom punishment. Out for Justice once contained a barroom sequence that pushed Gino Felino into territory far more ruthless than what audiences ultimately saw. In this deleted version, Gino plowed through an entire room of thugs with unrestrained fury, turning pool cues, shattered bottles, and overturned tables into extensions of his rage. The choreography emphasized a harsh, almost primal efficiency, every strike delivered with weight, every takedown carrying a sense of personal retribution. Crew members later recalled how the scene was designed to illustrate the emotional fracture driving Gino's mission, showcasing a side of him that bordered on feral. But the test audience reacted with visible unease. Many felt the violence lingered too long, commenting that Gino's fury tipped from righteous anger into something disturbingly cold. Others wrote that the extended brutality pulled the film into a darker register that overshadowed the narrative's pacing. Concerned about maintaining Siegel's heroic image and wary of escalating pressure from the MPAA, the studio made the decision to drastically cut the scene. What's left in the theatrical version is only a diluted shadow of the original vision, leaving fans speculating about just how intense the barroom punishment once was before it was softened for release. Fact 11. Double Impact's scrapped twin onslaught sequence. Double Impact originally featured a large-scale fight that would have fully embraced the film's dual leap concept. In this deleted segment, both Alex and Chad fought side by side in an industrial labyrinth, their contrasting personalities reflected in their combat styles. Alex attacked with raw aggression, wild strikes, heavy kicks, and improvised weapon swings, while Chad countered with precise, more meticulous movements. Split-screen shots, motion-matched doubles, and practical effects were blended to create the illusion of seamless teamwork between the twins. However, when the unfinished version was shown during early screenings, the scene's technical complexity became its downfall. Viewers found the optical seams distracting, noting that the split-screen effects looked rough and pulled attention away from the choreography. Others commented that the fight arrived at a moment when the narrative needed to tighten, not expand. With post-production resources already stretched, then the studio decided it was safer to remove the sequence entirely rather than refine it. Its absence leaves a noticeable gap in the film, a missed opportunity to deliver the ultimate Van Damme double-team spectacle, remembered today only through production whispers and early crew recollections. Fact 12. Only the Strong's lost skyline duel. Only the Strong once contained a breathtaking rooftop encounter, intended to showcase the fluid beauty of capoeira against the backdrop of a glowing city skyline. The scene paired Louis Stevens with a rival fighter whose style mirrored his own, resulting in a spiraling exchange of kicks, sweeps, and aerial spins. Wind machines heightened the sense of movement, while the camera drifted in wide arcs to capture the choreography, as if it were a dance suspended above the city. For the crew, this was one of the most striking pieces of visual storytelling within the film. Yet when the rough cut was screened, the duel didn't resonate as expected. Some viewers admired the elegance, but others complained the scene slowed the narrative too close to the climax. A few also noted that the temporary lighting made certain movements difficult to follow. Facing concerns about pacing and the risk of overshadowing the final confrontation, the studio removed the entire skyline fight. What remains now are only still photographs and fragments of behind-the-scenes recordings, remnants of a sequence that could have marked one of the most visually compelling moments in American martial arts cinema of the 1990s. Fact 13. Lionheart's deleted freight yard clash. Lionheart once featured a tense early morning confrontation along a deserted freight yard meant to reveal the emotional strain Lion carried before entering the underground fight circuit. In the original sequence, fog drifted between stacked containers as Lion trudged through the industrial maze, only to be ambushed by enforcers determined to halt his journey. The fight that followed was anything but clean. Lion fought with fatigue in his shoulders and desperation in his eyes, using whatever the environment offered: metal hooks, splintered pallets, loose ropes. The choreography conveyed a man clinging to purpose, even as exhaustion threatened to drag him under. But while the sequence added emotional weight, test screening responses painted a very different picture. Some viewers felt the grim tone slowed the film's opening act, while others believed the confrontation made Lion appear too hardened before the audience had fully invested in his motives. Executives concerned that the fight overshadowed key character beat soon after made the call to remove it completely. What remained in the final cut was a sudden narrative shift, a missing thread that once connected Lion's inner turmoil to his outward journey. For many fans and crew members, the freight yard clash has lingered as one of the film's most atmospheric losses. Fact 14. Marked for Death's lost production lab rampage. Marked for Death originally included a sprawling raid on a concealed drug production lab, a smoky, volatile battleground where John Hatcher carved through armed guards with a combination of improvised weapons and precise strikes. The scene weaved through chemical vats, metal walkways, and flickering lights, building toward a vicious machete confrontation that pushed the stunt team to its limits. Crew members described it as an immersive piece of action that showed the sheer scale of the criminal empire Hatcher was dismantling. Yet once the sequence reached test audiences, the reaction was anything but enthusiastic. Many viewers labeled the assault as excessively harsh, noting that its gritty violence felt out of sync with the film's intended rhythm. Others worried that the machete choreography filmed with unsettling realism would draw a harsher content rating. With concerns stacking up, studio leadership decided the entire sequence was too risky to keep. Only a few fleeting shots survived in the theatrical cut. The full lab rampage, once envisioned as a show-stopping centerpiece, now remains one of the most intriguing casualties of the film's editing process. Fact 15. Cyborg's removed sandstorm engagement. Cyborg once contained a desert confrontation designed to enrich the bleak post-apocalyptic tone of the film's world. Shot during late afternoon winds that whipped sand across the frame, the scene followed Gibson Rickenbacker as he tracked down a group of Fender's scouts. The clash unfolded across dunes, jagged rocks, and shifting ground, blending wide blade exchanges with frantic scrambles on loose sand. The sequence culminated in a dangerous stunt involving a steep embankment, a fall that required multiple rehearsals and careful coordination to land safely. But during the test screening phase, audience reactions dampened ambitions for the scene. Some viewers admired the atmosphere, but many felt the extended desert engagement slowed the momentum at a pivotal point. Others noted that its unforgiving tone risked overshadowing the emotional trajectory leading into the final act. With Canon films already facing tight budgets and a need for quicker pacing, the decision was made to cut the entire set piece. Its removal leaves a noticeable jump in the film's rhythm, a missing bridge that once connected Gibson's pursuit to the story's final surge. To this day, the sandstorm fight remains one of Cyborg's most discussed lost chapters. Bonus fact: Red Sun Rising's Lost Neon Alley Showdown. Red Sun Rising once featured a visually striking alley confrontation that blended noir atmosphere with sharp martial arts choreography, a sequence many crew members believed would become one of Dom the Dragon Wilson's most iconic moments. The missing scene unfolded under pulsing neon reflections as rain fell in sheets, turning the narrow alley into a glowing corridor of color and shadow. Hoshino squared off against three assassins wielding short blades and a customized chain weapon, their movements slicing through the darkness with metallic precision. The choreography emphasized proximity and tension, blades brushing past fabric feet, splashing through puddles, and the chain weapon cracking through the air like a whip of lightning. But when the rough cut containing this fight reached its first test audience, the response tilted sharply toward discomfort. Viewers described the amplified blade sounds and close-up impacts as too intense, giving the moment a level of immediacy that some found unnerving. Others felt the scene outshined the film's later confrontations, disrupting the escalation of action the narrative worked to build. Concerned about both rating complications and tonal imbalance, the studio made the decision to remove the entire sequence. What remains today are only glimpses, a few behind-the-scenes pictures, fragments of rehearsal footage, and accounts from the stunt team, who considered it one of their finest collaborations. The Neon Alley Showdown has since become a whispered legend among martial arts fans, a fully realized set piece that dazzled in production but disappeared before it could ever reach the screen. So many of these lost battles were crafted with precision, risk, and a level of creativity that never had the chance to reach the people they were meant for. Test screenings silenced scenes that could have redefined characters, deepened story arcs, or showcased some of the finest stunt work of their era. Now that you've seen what was left behind, which unseen fight do you think would have changed its movie the most, and should these moments have survived, or were the studios right to lock them away?